The quiet man in the last seat lecture hall was packed. Every seat was taken. Students were sitting on stairs, standing in the back, even leaning against the walls. The buzz in the room wasn't normal for a math seminar. People whispered, laughed nervously, and kept checking the front row where a famous mathematician named Dr. Ellis would soon present a problem so hard that even experts had called it impossible. This wasn't just any lecture. This was a challenge. A challenge Dr. Ellis had announced on TV weeks ago. He said, "If anyone in the room can solve this, they'll have my full respect and maybe my job." It was bold, it was dramatic, and it was meant to scare everyone. But in the very last row, nearly hidden behind the tall students, sat a man wearing a simple hoodie, jeans, and a baseball cap. No one noticed him. No one even turned to look, because in a sea of bright minds and confident voices, he looked normal, maybe even a bit lost, but he wasn't. That man was Keanu Reeves. And no one knew what he was about to do. Keanu didn't raise his hand. He didn't bring a notebook. He just sat quietly, fingers lightly tapping on the side of his chair. He was calm, still, but his eyes moved quickly. They studied everything: the chalkboard, the equations already written, and the tired face of the man about to walk on stage. When Dr. Ellis finally entered, the room burst into applause. He nodded, smiled, and cleared his throat. "Today," he said, "you are not here to learn. You are here to try, and most of you will fail." He paused, letting the tension rise. "I've written something behind this curtain. It's a problem, based on 4 unsolved theories, built into one. Many of my colleagues say it's not even solvable. But I believe someone, somewhere, can see what others don't." Then he pulled the curtain. The board was filled from corner to corner. Lines, graphs, formulas stacked like bricks. Even the math students gasped. A few laughed nervously. One girl whispered, "That's not real. It can't be." But Keanu just stared. His eyes narrowed, and his lips moved without sound. Something was happening in his mind. Something quiet, but powerful. Drive. Ellis turned to the crowd. "You have 1 hour. You can form teams. You can use logic. You can even guess. Just try." Some students rushed forward. Others formed quick huddles. Notebooks flew open. Markers squeaked. The room became a storm of thought. And Keanu sat still. He didn't move. He didn't even blink for a while. He was remembering something. Not a formula. A feeling. A moment from long ago. A time before the movies. Before the fame. Before the cameras. When he was just a boy, sitting on a floor in a quiet library in Toronto. Reading a book on fractals. He didn't understand all the words, but he remembered the shapes, the patterns, the way something simple could become something infinite. And suddenly his eyes widened. Keanu stood up, quietly, gently, no drama. He walked down the stairs toward the board. No one noticed. They were too busy talking, guessing, arguing. But Dr. Ellis noticed. He watched, confused, as the quiet man in the cap stepped up to the board, picked up a piece of chalk, and began to write. One line, then another. He moved with care, not fast, not slow, like someone who wasn't guessing, just remembering. The room grew quieter. One student nudged another. "Who is that guy?" "I don't know. Janitor, maybe." Keanu didn't stop. Line by line. He built something on the board, but it wasn't just math. It was movement. It was like watching a story unfold. His fingers paused at the edges, then returned, connecting pieces that didn't look like they belonged until they did. Drive. Ellis stepped closer, eyebrows raised. It had only been 47 seconds. Keanu put the chalk down. And turned around. The room stared. Drive. Ellis walked slowly to the board. "Read each step. Read it again. Then again." His lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, he turned to the class. And said something that silenced the world. "He solved it." The students blinked. "What? He what? Solved what, Dr.?" Ellis looked straight at Keanu. Double quote, "Sir, may I ask your name?" Keanu smiled, humble and soft. "Just Keanu." Someone in the front row whispered, "Wait, Keanu Reeves." Gasps followed. A boy dropped his pen. The girl beside him covered her mouth. Drive. Ellis looked stunned. You're the actor? Keanu shrugged. I like numbers too. The class broke into chaos. Phones came out. Photos were taken. But Keanu had already picked up his cap and was walking toward the exit. Not to escape the noise, but because he wasn't there for applause. He just wanted to see if he still had it. And deep down, he knew math never cared about fame. Only truth. And in that moment, he had given it exactly that. What they didn't see coming. News spread faster than wildfire. By the time Keanu walked out of the lecture hall and stepped onto the quiet sidewalk, 3 students had already uploaded clips to social media. Within 15 minutes, hashtags like #KeanuMath and #Reeves for 7 seconds were trending worldwide. Everyone was asking the same question: how did Keanu Reeves, the actor known for action movies and humble kindness, solve a math problem top professors had called impossible? But Keanu didn't stop to look at his phone. He kept walking, head down, hands in his hoodie pocket, not running from the moment but trying to protect it, trying to keep it untouched by the noise. Because that 47 seconds wasn't about showing off. It was about healing something inside him that had been quiet for years, something very few people knew about, something even fewer had ever asked years ago. Before Hollywood, before cameras, before red carpets, Keanu had loved math. Not the kind in school textbooks, but the kind you felt, the kind that showed up in music, in art, in the way sunlight moved across a floor. When he was a teenager, he spent hours drawing spirals, not for class, not for anyone, just because something in his mind needed to see how beauty could grow from logic. He wanted to study it, chase it, but life had other plans. His family moved, his father left, his mother worked 3 jobs. And Keanu, he found acting, not because it was easy, but because it paid the bills. He buried the math. He told himself, maybe that part of me was never meant to last, but it never really left. And now, after one unexpected walk into a college lecture hall, it had returned like a heartbeat. The next day, he received a call. It was Dr. Ellis. I need to see you, he said. You didn't just solve the problem, you exposed a flaw in the system. Your approach, it's not even in our current teaching models. Keanu met him at a small campus cafe. They sat in the back. No cameras. No students. Just 2 people talking like old friends who didn't know they were supposed to be strangers. How did you see it, Dr. Ellis asked. Keanu thought for a second. You were trying to fix something from the top down, he said softly. But I just looked at the center. Dr. Ellis smiled slowly. You think differently. Keanu shook his head. No, I just think, quietly. Will you speak at my next lecture? Keanu paused, not as a guest, as a teacher. Dr. Ellis said, they need to see that math isn't just logic, it's life, and you make it feel human. Keanu laughed, gently. I'm not a teacher, but you just taught a room full of minds in less than a minute. He agreed. One time. One guest talk. But what happened next? No one was ready for it. The university sent out a simple flyer. Special guest, Keanu Reeves, on why solving problems isn't about genius. It's about peace. It was meant to be small. But when the day came, the entire campus overflowed. Students. Parents. Journalists. Even engineers and professors from other schools drove hours just to be in the room. Keanu stood at the front. No podium. No suit. Just a man in a hoodie with a piece of chalk in one hand. And a calm voice. When I was young, he began, I thought math was about being right. But now I know it's about being patient. He shared stories. Not just of numbers. But of silence. Of grief. Of losing people he loved and finding comfort in symmetry. When I lost someone close, he said, I didn't want to talk, but drawing patterns helped me breathe. I didn't solve math problems to win anything. I solved them to feel whole. The room went still. A girl in the second row began to cry, not because of the numbers on the board, but because someone had just said out loud what she'd been feeling for years. That pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it draws spirals. After the talk, a young boy approached Keanu. He was shaking. He looked no older than 16. Mr. Reeves, he whispered, I've never been good at school. I get lost. But when you solved that equation, something clicked in me. Keanu knelt so they were eye to eye. Do you love the way things fit? He asked gently. The boy nodded. Double quotes, then don't ever stop chasing that. Before leaving, the boy handed him a small notebook filled with sketches of patterns. Keanu didn't say anything. He just smiled and held the notebook like it was made of gold. That night, he sat alone in his room. He opened the notebook again. Page after page of spirals, circles, broken shapes trying to find their center. And Keanu whispered, I see you. Not to the boy, but to himself, to the younger version of him who once believed he had to let go of this part of who he was. Because now, he understood you don't have to choose between who the world sees and who you really are. Sometimes, they meet in the middle. The formula they never taught weeks passed, but the moment never faded. Everywhere Keanu went, people now whispered his name for something more than acting. No longer just the man behind the movies, he was now the man who saw math like poetry. A quiet rebel who had walked into a storm of equations and left the world breathless in 47 seconds. But Keanu didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted to understand. Why did that problem call to him? Why, after years away from numbers, had he seen it so clearly? And more importantly, why did it matter so much to others? He started visiting schools, not elite universities, not fancy seminar rooms, just ordinary classrooms, public schools, community colleges, youth centers. He never made an announcement. He just showed up. One day, he walked into a high school in Detroit where kids were known more for dropping out than graduating. The school principal couldn't believe her eyes. You're Keanu Reeves, she asked. Blinking. He nodded gently. I heard your math teacher was out sick. I thought I'd help. The students didn't believe it at first. They laughed, whispered. Some even rolled their eyes. But Keanu didn't flinch. He walked to the whiteboard and wrote one word. Why? He turned to the class. Everyone talks about what you're learning, but no one asks why you should care. He pointed to a cracked tile on the floor. Someone measured that wrong. Now the whole row is uneven. He pointed to a chair. Someone designed that shape so it doesn't fall when you lean back. Then he pointed to a girl sitting in the back, staring at her phone. Someone coded that app so your screen knows when to flip. The room grew quiet. Because suddenly math wasn't a subject. It was the world. After class, one of the students followed him out. A tall boy with shy eyes. Mr. Reeves, he said softly. I didn't get it before, but now I kinda do. Keanu smiled. You don't have to get all of it. Just don't stop looking. The boy reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper. I've been trying to solve this. It's just something I made up. Keanu looked at the numbers. A strange little puzzle, unpolished, a little messy but clever. He sat on the steps and worked through it. 5 minutes passed, then 10. And when he reached the end, he looked up. You didn't make a mistake, he said. The boy blinked. You made a discovery. The next day, Keanu received a call from Dr. Ellis again. There's a conference, he said. The top mathematicians from around the world will be there, and they're all asking the same thing. Will you speak? Keanu hesitated. They'll expect a scholar, he said. I'm just me. But Dr. Ellis chuckled. And that's exactly why you need to go. The conference was held in Switzerland. Glass buildings, suits, cameras. Keanu walked in wearing a gray sweater and soft black jeans. No script. No slideshow. Just a chalkboard and an old piece of paper. When it was his turn, he didn't start with math. He started with grief. He told the crowd about his sister's battle with cancer, about the long nights when he sat by her hospital bed, drawing spirals on napkins to keep from crying. He told them about losing friends, about the emptiness fame couldn't fix. And how, in that emptiness, he remembered the only thing that ever gave him peace. Patterns. The quiet order beneath chaos. Then he turned to the board. And slowly, carefully, drew a formula no one in that room had seen before. Not because it was too complex. But because it was too human. The formula was based on ratios found in music, in leaves, in the time between heartbeats. It wasn't just math. It was life. And the room, silent. Some cried. Others just stared, stunned. Because for the first time, they saw math not as a challenge, but as a mirror. After the talk, a woman approached him, She was in her 70s. A mathematician from France. She shook his hand and said, I've spent 50 years searching for something new, and today, you reminded me why I started. Keanu didn't say much, just smiled and nodded. Later that night, alone in his room, he looked at the chalk-stained sweater he wore. He didn't feel famous. He felt full, because somewhere between the movies and the numbers, between grief and symmetry, he had finally found something that felt right. But even then, he didn't know the real test was still coming. One that would not be solved with chalk or numbers, but with courage. Asterisk the equation he couldn't ignore for the first time in years. Keanu Reeves felt something he hadn't felt since he was a boy sitting cross-legged on a library floor. Peace. But peace doesn't always last. Not in a world that doesn't understand quiet minds. 2 weeks after the conference in Switzerland, Keanu received a letter. Not an email. Not a message on social media. A real letter. It was from a small university in India. Handwritten. Careful. Respectful. Dear Mr. Reeves, my name is Kavya. I am a math student, but also my little brother's only guardian. He is sick, and I can't afford treatment. I'm sorry to write you, but I don't know what else to do. He saw your video, the one where you solved the impossible problem, and he believes you're a hero. I guess I believe that too. If you come here, even just to talk, I think they'll help me get him care. Keanu stared at the letter. His fingers brushed the edges. This wasn't about equations anymore. This was about something else. He didn't ask his team. He didn't tell the press. He booked a flight, packed a small bag, and left quietly. When he arrived in India, the airport was crowded, but no one noticed him. He wore sunglasses, a cap, and walked like any tired traveler, important and unrecognized. But inside, he carried the weight of a letter, written with more honesty than any Hollywood script. He found the university. It was small. No gates, no press, no stage. Just a dusty yard, some worn-out classrooms, and a girl waiting near the steps. Kavya. She recognized him instantly. Not because he was famous, but because he had come. I didn't think you'd really come, she whispered, her eyes wide. Keanu smiled gently. You wrote with truth, he said. That's rare. She took him to a nearby clinic. Her brother was there. Thin, tired. But when he saw Keanu, he sat up and whispered, 47 seconds. Keanu chuckled. You remembered? The boy nodded. I want to be like you. Keanu sat by the bed. He didn't give money. He gave something else. Time. Presence. He listened. He asked the boy to teach him something. The boy blinked. Teach you? Yes, Keanu said softly. Tell me what pattern brings you peace. The boy showed him drawings of stars and dots. Uneven, childlike, beautiful. Keanu studied them like sacred texts. That night, he held a small talk at the university. No tickets. No lights. Just students sitting on the ground. People think math is about solving problems, he began. But sometimes it's about seeing pain and saying, I'm here. He talked about fear. About being unsure. About how the hardest equations aren't on paper. They're inside us. At the end, a student asked, what do you do when you feel lost? Keanu looked down. Then said, I trace the spiral until I find the center again. But the next morning, things changed. Someone had taken a photo, a blurry image of him sitting with the boy in the clinic. It spread. The media caught on. And within 24 hours, the world exploded. Keanu Reeves secretly visits Indian University. Fans stunned math genius or guardian angel. Keanu Reeves redefines fame again. Cameras appeared. Crowds formed outside the clinic. Paparazzi shouted questions. But Keanu didn't run. He stepped outside, calm, and held up the letter Kavya had written. I came because someone asked. Me too, he said. Not because of who I am, but because of what I believe. A journalist shouted. What do you believe, Mr. Reeves? He looked at the girl. Then at the crowd. I believe kindness is the most advanced formula of all. The next day, the boy was moved to a better hospital. A private donor offered to pay for his full treatment. No strings. Kavya cried. Keanu said nothing. He just squeezed her hand and flew home the next morning. Alone. Quiet. But forever changed. Because That trip wasn't about solving a problem, that it was about being the answer. And deep down, he knew the most powerful math in the world wasn't written on chalkboards. It was written in moments like these. The challenge no one expected. Keanu Reeves returned to Los Angeles without noise, without cameras. But the world had already changed. What started as a quiet moment in a math class had become something much bigger. Articles called him the world's most humble genius. Memes were made of chalkboards and spirals. Schools began inviting him to speak, to visit, to inspire. But Keanu didn't feel like a genius. He felt like someone who had just opened a door, and behind that door was another dot and another, until one day he received a formal letter from the International Institute of Mathematical Sciences. They wanted him to join a panel, not as a celebrity guest, as a problem solver. "We are organizing the Global Logic Symposium," the letter said, "and we are facing a new equation, one that may affect real-world systems, transportation, climate forecasting, communication models. Our own researchers are split. Would you consider offering your insight?" Keanu paused. This wasn't a classroom. This was real. This was impact. He said yes. When he arrived at the institute, the room was filled with minds from every part of the world. Young, old, confident, doubtful. Some looked surprised to see him. One man whispered to another, "What is he doing here?" Keanu heard it. He didn't flinch. He just smiled and took his seat. At the center of the room was a long table, and on that table was a single sheet of paper, a model of a future system designed to predict human behavior during emergencies using advanced logic trees. But something was wrong with it. A loop, a flaw. It kept circling itself, and no one could break it. A woman from Germany explained, "We've tested hundreds of paths. Each one collapses after phase 3. If we deploy this system as is, it could fail during a real crisis." Another expert added, "But if we solve it, it could save thousands, maybe millions. We're running simulations for disaster planning in high-risk zones." Keanu listened quietly. He didn't reach for the paper. He asked one question. "What emotion is missing from your model?" The room blinked. "Emotion." Someone repeated. Double quotes. "Yes," he said. "You're building it like a machine. But in emergencies, people don't act like code. They act like hearts." They hesitated. Then nodded. Slowly. Keanu stood. Walked to the board. And drew to things. A curve. And a pause. In logic, a pause is often where the answer waits, he said. This equation fails because it assumes constant reaction. But in real life, we hesitate. We look for our kids. We remember someone we lost. We choose fear or bravery. He rewrote one section of the logic path. Then stood back. They ran it through the simulator. Phase 1, passed. Phase 2, stable. Phase 3, didn't collapse. The room was silent. Then someone whispered, "It worked." Another said, "How did he?" But Keanu didn't answer. He just sat back down. Hands folded. Humble. The lead scientist walked over. "We've spent for months on this," she said softly. "And you fixed it in 10 minutes. Keanu shook his head. "I didn't fix it," he said. "I listened to it." That night, back in his hotel, Keanu wrote something in his notebook. Not an equation, not a theory, just a sentence. "The human heart is the variable no one dares to solve for." His phone buzzed. A message from the same young boy in India. "Guess what? I'm going home next week." "Thank you, Mr. Reeves." Keanu smiled, and for the first time in a long time, tears filled his eyes. Not from sadness. From clarity. He now understood his gift wasn't in solving problems. It was in seeing the people inside them. And in a world full of algorithms and predictions, sometimes the most powerful solution is to care. The final proof months passed. The world had changed, but Keanu Reeves hadn't. He still walked quietly through airports, still carried a small notebook in his coat pocket, still sat alone in cafes, scribbling spirals on napkins while sipping black coffee. But now, the whispers were different. They weren't about movies or red carpets. They were about math. About hope. About the moment the world stopped for 47 seconds and watched a man do something no one saw coming. But this part of his story wasn't over, because one day, A letter arrived from a woman named Dr. Esha Anand, head of a new initiative in Africa where data scientists were building models to prevent drought-driven famine. The letter was handwritten. Just like KeanuReeves, your presence has inspired more than just students. Our models predict rainfall and food supply based on decades of data, but something isn't working. Entire regions drop out of the model. The math fails to see them. We don't know what we're missing. We heard what you did, how you saw the pause, the heart. We're asking, humbly, will you come help us see what we don't? He said yes. Again. Quietly. No press, no announcement. Just a flight, a bag, and his notebook. When he arrived in Kenya, he was welcomed by scientists and volunteers. Many didn't believe it was really him, but when they sat in the circle and he opened his notebook, they knew. Keanu spent hours with them. But not behind computers. He walked the dry fields, spoke with farmers, sat under acacia trees with children who told him how they knew the rain was coming. Not from charts or sensors, but from birds, from heat in the soil, from old stories. He listened. And then he saw it. Your data models drop out, he said, because they stop counting what doesn't have a number. He pointed to a spot on the map. Here, this area was listed as abandoned. But it's not. People live here. They just stopped reporting because no one ever answered. Everyone went quiet. He rewrote part of their formula using local behavior cycles, not just weather. He added human trust to the algorithm. In 3 days, the model changed. A forgotten village showed up again in the forecast. For the first time in years, they predicted rainfall correctly. It saved lives. A few days later, Keanu stood under a clear sky. Children gathered around him, laughing. One girl handed him a piece of dry bark with something carved into it, a spiral. He smiled and tucked it into his bag. When he returned to Los Angeles, a letter waited for him at home. It was from a school in Toronto. His old school. Reeves, we'd like to name our new mathematics and philosophy wing in your honor, not because of what you solved, but because of what you reminded us. Math is not just answers. It's understanding. He never replied publicly, but he did visit. And when he saw his name on the wall, simple, small letters, carved beside the word center, he paused. Not for photos. Not for applause. Just to remember. Because this wasn't about fame anymore. This was about coming full circle. Later that night, he sat on his balcony. He opened his notebook. And wrote his final proof, not with numbers, but with truth. Some problems don't want to be solved. They want to be seen. And sometimes, so do we. Keanu closed the notebook, breathed in the silence, and smiled, because he knew the world didn't change when he solved a problem. It changed the moment he decided to see what others had ignored. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most human formula of all.